Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a truly radical vision for education, one that promised students real-world skills and a mission, all with zero debt. So, what happened when that vision smashed head-on into the modern world? Well, it's a story of independence, conformity, and a single choice that changed absolutely everything. Okay, let's just start with a question that honestly feels almost impossible today. What if schools were actually designed to be completely debt-free and independent? Seriously, just imagine graduating with practical skills you can actually use, a real sense of purpose, and not a mountain of debt. It sounds like a fantasy, right? But for a while, it was very, very real. Well, that very question leads us to this specific philosophy from the Adventist movement called the Blueprint. And yeah, it was exactly what it sounds like. A detailed plan for building a totally different kind of school, one designed from the ground up to produce a totally different kind of graduate. And look, these ideas, they were completely countercultural. The Blueprint said schools should be out in the country, away from the cities. Instead of paying tuition, students would work on campus to pay their own way. The whole curriculum was about practical, hands-on skills, training them for missionary work where they could be totally self-sufficient, without needing a stamp of approval from any outside group. And the whole idea behind this, the core principle, laid out by Adventist pioneer Ellen White, was total self-reliance. See, financial independence wasn't just about good bookkeeping. It was about spiritual independence. In this view, debt was like a chain. It would bind the schools to worldly systems and drag them away from their real mission. So you might be thinking, okay, great theory, but did it ever actually work in the real world? Well, it absolutely did. Let's take a look at the most famous test of the Blueprint, a small but incredibly ambitious school down in Tennessee called Madison College. Madison started with just a 400-acre farm back in 1904, and it grew into something just incredible. I mean, they built a sanitarium with no money up front, just pure faith that the funds would show up. And they did. By the 1930s, this unique, self-sustaining community was so successful, it was getting praised in national magazines, and even by the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. And get this. This was not some elite, expensive institution. It was the exact opposite. A student could enroll at Madison with just $35. That's it, 35 bucks. Everything else, they earned it through their own hard work. The model was simple but genius. 5 hours of work, 5 hours of study, every single day. The students themselves ran 27 different industries right there on campus, everything from farming to a print shop. And the results were just mind-blowing. A survey during the Great Depression found that out of 1,000 Madison graduates, not a single one was on government aid. And they didn't just support themselves, they went out and founded dozens of smaller, self-supporting schools, all based on that same model. But you know how these stories go. While Madison was proving this whole thing could actually work, another force was rising, a powerful push in the exact opposite direction. All across the country, the pressure for official, standardized accreditation was building, and it put this little independent school on a collision course with the modern world. And this is where you can really see the two paths, the two completely different visions, side by side. On one hand, you've got the Blueprint model. Its goal was self-supporting missionaries. It followed its own internal principles, and it was debt-free. On the other hand, you have the accredited model. Its goal was regularly qualified physicians who could compete in the secular world. And to do that, it had to follow the external rules of groups like the American Medical Association, which meant taking on massive debt for AMA-approved buildings and equipment. And this wasn't some quiet, behind-the-scenes debate. Oh no. People were openly asking tough questions. Leaders like F.M. Wilcox basically said, look, if our goal is just to be like every other college out there, then why are we even bothering? Why not just send our kids to their schools? They were terrified of losing the very thing that made them special. Now, the pressure was most intense in the medical field. Schools like the College of Medical Evangelists, which later became Loma Linda University, were at a major crossroads. The AMA essentially gave them an ultimatum. Either standardize everything, your classes, your equipment, your teachers, or become irrelevant and totally unrecognized. For the people who believed in the Blueprint, this wasn't just about educational standards. To them, it was a deeply spiritual compromise. They even had a name for it, a confederacy with the world. They believed that tying themselves to these secular organizations would force them to adopt secular values and ultimately destroy their entire reason for existing. So, What happens when the pressure to conform, to join that confederacy, finally comes for the one school that was the Blueprint's biggest success story?
Well, the fall of Madison, it happened step by step, and it's pretty heartbreaking to watch. First, they decided to pursue accreditation. That immediately led to massive debt because they had to pay for all the required upgrades. Then, as the school's focus shifted from practical skills to getting degrees, the original mission just faded away. The whole network of smaller, self-supporting schools that fed into Madison started to dry up, and finally, crushed by debt, the once independent school had to be handed over to the larger church organization. And soon after that, the college itself was gone.
And you can see that change in focus so clearly right here. Before accreditation, the measure of success was how many missionaries went out to start new outposts. But by 1963, the school was proudly counting its 140 graduates who had earned doctorates. The entire definition of success had been completely transformed. And here's the really tragic part. Even the people who led the charge for accreditation started to see the fallout. Percy Magin, who was a founder of Madison before he became president of CME, looked at the shrinking number of graduates going into mission work, and he called the whole situation heartbreaking. He could see the school's very purpose just slipping away. But maybe the most shocking moment, the most powerful confession, came from Arthur Daniels, a key church leader who had championed accreditation. Years later, in 1935, a student found him weeping on the campus of Loma Linda, and his message was the stark, emotional warning, an admission of what he now saw as a terrible mistake. Obey the spirit of prophecy. I didn't and paid the price. And the consequences didn't stop with Madison. This one choice had a domino effect across the entire Adventist educational system. The result? Widespread debt, a new focus on degrees over practical skills, and a slow drift toward a more secular campus life. Even unique medical practices like hydrotherapy and natural remedies were eventually abandoned just to conform to outside standards. So all of this, it brings us right back to the beginning, but with a new question. For us, today, we've seen a model of education that was debt-free, mission-focused, and incredibly practical. We saw it rise, we saw it thrive, and then we saw it vanish. So in our world of crushing student debt and endless debates about what a degree is actually worth, could something like the Blueprint work today? That's the question this whole story forces us to ask.